Dan Italy till Robert Kutashi. Herr Kutashi var ledaren mot anti-matchfixing i Ungarn. So in 2012, Robert Kutashi, the man on the screen, I can see my new friend at the back in the white T-shirt looking at me going, what language was that guy speaking? Was that Norwegian? What was that? This guy was the leader of the anti-match-fixing campaign, kind of like the Stop the Match-Fixing campaign that we're dealing with today. Former football journalist, as many of you guys are, turned into a football coach, known for his integrity. And in around 2010, 2011, I came to Hungary and had a similar campaign such as this one. And they said, okay, let's give this campaign to Robert Kutashi. Nice guy, decent guy, blah, blah, blah. But really, they actually didn't really take this too seriously. It's kind of one of these things that you do. Part of the reason why they did it was that I didn't know this at the time, but my publisher was a young guy. He was a young goalkeeper for one of the Hungarian professional teams. But he was actually the crown prince of Hungary. I didn't know that, but so that meant that when he did things that they kind of paid attention to it, but they didn't actually take it very seriously. So Kutashi fought against this. Zero money, very little budget, made lots of nice speeches. Everybody said that stuff. Until February 2012, where thanks to the German and Hungarian police, the German and Finland police, the Hungarian police moved in and arrested over 50 people connected with Hungarian soccer, football, including 7 players on Robert Kutashi's own team. He was devastated. On March 1st, 2012, a friend and colleague of mine received a phone call from him. Soon after that phone call, about 10 minutes later, he went to a nearby building, 16th floor, took off his jacket, put down his mobile phone, and walked out that window and killed himself. He left a 12-year-old daughter and a wife. I want to start with this because after Jack Anderson's excellent presentation, I want to get into the human heart of this issue. He's not alone. There were 5 South Korean suicides linked to match fixing. There have been innumerable beatings up. The entire Bochum German organized crime task force set up to fight match fixing was started because they overheard Turkish match fixers threatening to kidnap the daughter, rape and torture her. And so they had to move in and start cracking on this stuff. So there's a human beating heart and there's a human beating price to this that often we forget, often that we kind of shield ourselves and do what the Hungarians did in 2010 and 2011 and say, yeah, this is interesting, but it's not really an urgent, critical human issue. 10 years ago, November 2005, was the first public mention of match fixing, the new face of match fixing. I know the date specifically because I was the man that did it, Play the Game, and many people regarded this as a ridiculous idea. Kenneth Rees, at the then secretary of the Turkish Football Association, ran down the hall, grabbed me, and said, "This will not happen in Denmark. We want you to come back and we want to start preparing. We want to make sure that working with Dankspil, we're going to make sure that match fixing doesn't happen in Denmark." It was 10 years ago. So in my presentation, which I'll try to do as quickly as I possibly can, let's review what's happened over 10 years. Let's review what's happened in the last 3 months because there have been some very significant findings which fundamentally altered the paradigm of the fight against match fixing. Then let's talk about what Denmark can do in this Stop the Match Fixing campaign. And then the best part of my presentation will be the end because you guys will get to have coffee and drinks. So let's talk about these guys. As some of you know, my books are about the work that I did in Asia, where I wore wires, hidden cameras, and hidden microphones, and I infiltrated a gang of match fixers that were going around the world, specifically to the World Cup in 2006, and fixing games. And I taped them and showed them. Again, my friend with the white T-shirt, who's got the skeptical expression on his face. I'm just going to pick on you constantly, brother. I'm so sorry, man. Your face, like that kind of, like, what the heck is this guy's talking about, was basically the reaction that most people, I don't blame you. Tell me your name, by the way. Jesper. Okay, Jesper. All right. No, it's all right. I don't mean to pick on you, Jesper, and stuff, but it's just, you look like you could beat the crap out of me. So I'm picking on you now, but at break, I'm running down the hall and locking myself in the bathroom. Yeah. So the gang that I infiltrated was a gang that I talked about called Li Chin gang, but that was actually Dan Tan's people. And I'll talk to you at the end about a little bit about what we know and how we know it. But let's just go through. Actually, let's say a thing just before I'm going to start here. We know almost everything about this gang now. So when I was talking about them 10 years ago, I had to be very careful for legal reasons, for all kinds of stuff. They would find me and track me down. Now we know where they live, we know their things, we know their runners, we know their contacts, we know their horoscopes, we know their birthdays, we know their first wives, their second wives. We know everything about these guys. We know where they work. So Costa Rica, El Salvador, they were fixing the entire El Salvadorian national team. So 15 now the El Salvadorian national team players have been thrown out of the game for throwing out of the sport. They had links here with senior officials in Peru. They also Ecuador as well. Canada, my country, they essentially run teams in the Canadian Soccer League. They still do. Canadian Soccer League is a byword of corruption there. And we're not talking about players here. We're talking about teams. Fix that into your mind. This is team officials. The entire construct of some of the teams in the Canadian Soccer League is to fix. It's to win and lose. South Africa, not only do we have it from Dan Tan's network, we have the secret confidential FIFA reports. As some of you saw my front page story in the New York Times last year, just before the start of the World Cup. They weren't just fixing some of the friendly matches before the 2010 World Cup. They were being helped by people inside the South African Football Association. That pales in comparison with what they were doing with Zimbabwe in something called the Asiagate scandal. They were running, for all intents and purposes, the Zimbabwean Football Association. Again, this kind of thing may seem, if you're new to the debate, if you're coming in after 10 years, it may seem like, oh my goodness, how shocking this is. All of this is extensively documented. There's no doubt about this stuff. Ghana, as you people who have read my book, knows there's a long history of their work with the Ghanaians. The Ghanaian Football Association, by the way, was raided 3 years ago. FIFA stepped in and said if the Ghanaian government continues to investigate the Ghana Football Association, we will throw Ghana out of international football. And so the national authorities backed down and wouldn't carry on their investigation. Sierra Leone, there's currently a major political crisis going on between the sports ministers and various cabinet ministers because they're involved with the fixers. Egypt, they had various people. Zambia, they had a whole network of players. The Ivory Coast, at one point, there's a very famous video of Dan Tan sitting on the benches of the Ivory Coast and Mali game. Greece, where over 100 people have been arrested. Montenegro, Slovenia, Malta, Cyprus. You've seen the things where they were burning the referees' cars in Cyprus. Finland, where they were running people. Germany, as I mentioned, the Bochum investigation. Czech Republic, where the second major investigation that arrested 40 people, including their league officials and team officials. Italy is, as Jack was alluding to, is a complete nightmare. It's a dead man walking in terms of leagues. I'll get to that in a second. Slovakia, same thing. That's Czech Republic. Austria, where they've had now 2 waves of arrests. Switzerland had a number of arrests. I think that's Serbia and Croatia, where many of their guys were. Bulgaria, one of their main Geisman and their main financiers was from Bulgaria. Netherlands, there's been a fresh investigation launched into the Netherlands. Belgium, there's been 2 investigations, both of their work, and Li Qin. A lot of their cash comes from China, flows into Singapore and China. Many of their associates are from Malaysia. When I put this together, they just executed a fix in Australia, in the South League. So there we go. That's a small indication of their network, of what they're doing. Oh yeah, this is a list of tournaments affected by these guys. The Intertoto Cup, UEFA Europa League, UEFA Champions League, World Cup qualifying matches, Gold Cup tournament, Women's World Cup, Africa's Nations Cup, World Cup friendly matches, and 150 other things. I think I was trying to be absolutely, certain of these things. These are all the stuff that the Bochum investigators have linked them with. I've linked them, as you know, to the World Cup, and I didn't just link them because I was taping them as they were operating at the World Cup. Then I went to players like Stephen Appiah and talked to him and Aboubakar Damba, who was their runner for Ghana, saying how did they work, what did they do. It's bog standard that these guys were there. Here's a bunch of other places. Your Norwegian neighbors, of course. Sweden had a match-fixing case a couple of months ago that wasn't involved with Dan Tan, and so did Croatia. So there we go. That was them. Is there anyone in this room, Jesper? Is there anyone in this room who does not think that they must have had official collaboration to build up a network of this size? Is there anyone stupid enough to think that this is a network built on players and corrupted referees, and that nobody involved in the administration of a team or a league or the international association like FIFA cannot have known about this? Please put your hands up. I dare you to. Because that's what Interpol, that's what's FIFA, and that's what the official soccer line on match fixing is. That this network was built without official collaboration. So you go to those guys, they do not want to talk about this. That's the thing that they never, ever want to mention. That's the thing that their education campaigns are based on. Is that there was no official involvement in these guys. So, let me fill you in on Dan Tan's network just to bring you up to speed with what's happened to Dan Tan. After an extensive campaign, both by myself and a number of other individuals around the world, September 2013, Dan Tan was arrested. Singaporean officials arrested him not as a match fixer, but as a terrorist. And so under an outdated 1950s law put in place by the British government when they were fighting against the communists, Dan Tan is now in the 5th level in an underground prison in Changi. He has never been put on trial. He has never testified, despite a series of international arrest warrants from the Hungarians, where Robert Kutashi committed suicide, from Italy, they put in several, from Finland, and from the Germans. They've all gone through Interpol and said, please, we want Dan Tan because we want to clean up this network. We want to do this. They've never allowed Dan Tan to be released. Why not? Here's how Tan and his network worked. A friend of mine worked in the Norwegian shipping industry. In fact, she worked in the maritime oil insurance. What's that got to do with match fixing? Jesper, you got your expression on your face again. No, that's all right, brother. You're my man today. I'm just going to go to you whenever I need something here, all right? So, Jesper, what it used to happen 10 years ago in the oil industry, the maritime oil industry in Norway, was that they were one street of brokers. There was about 20 or 30 of them, and they would compete and collude with each other every day. In fact, the Norwegians were kings of the oil industry maritime oil industry of that time. There was them and the Panamanians. So basically, if Khalid Ali and Declan Hill, we wanted to insure our super tanker to go from Dubai to New York, we would phone up the Norwegians. And the Norwegians would go up and down the street putting together an insurance package to do it. And there was two places. There was Panama or Norway. And one day, Jesper, you and your colleague, tell me your name? Soren. I know, Soren, that you're like, oh man, please don't start on me. Okay, so Jesper, one day you and Soren would work together, and then the next day you'd be competing against each other. That's how these guys worked. They were the brokers. They were the guys that went to all these different countries and said, you want to make money? We'll teach you how to make money. We'll show you how to make money. We're not going to fix. We're not going to go to your players. We're not going to be a couple of Chinese or Tamil Indians from Singapore coming to Canada and talking to the Canadians. Those guys will laugh at us. They're not going to do anything. You fix, tell us, we'll place it on the unregulated gambling market. So it was a double fixing operation. So these guys, Dan Tan's network, knows people in the sports industry around the world. And Tan has never been put on trial, never testified, never spoken about who they were working with, what they were doing. Okay, 10 more minutes. So, what's happened in the last 3 months? Because that was the situation up to May 2015. We were in an ice jam. There was an enormous anti-match fixing industry that was diverting attention from the fact that we actually could root this problem out, this chapter of match fixing out very quickly. Two things occurred. One, there was arrest of over 50 people in southern Italy in a place called Catania. That happened in the days before the FIFA arrests, and it didn't get the attention it might have normally gotten. 3 factors come out of those arrests. 1, they weren't using Dan Tan's network. Tan's network had been replaced. So that opportunity that we had for a year or two of putting a serious dent into international match fixing, gone. The network is there, and they've simply replaced Tan and the brokers. Remember Soren and Jesper as the brokers? They've been taken out, they've been replaced with new brokers. And those new brokers are coming out of China and Russia. They're still using the Balkan boys as their runners, and I don't have the time today to explain the whole structure of how they work, but they're still basically using the same network of operations, and they're still going for it. 2, for almost the first time, we got team club owners and presidents arrested. And the Italian police spoke about a, quote, system of business. That's a good quote for you guys. It's a system of business to fix in Italy. So players are being taught. It's popular now to speak about anti-match fixing education campaigns, but players are taught as professionals to how to win and how to lose. So the club owners, that was the significant point of Jack Anderson's source. I don't know, can I go back to Jack's PowerPoint presentation? Nope, okay. Jack brought up an excellent point. He talked about the black book of FIFA Pro. You can find it on the internet, guys, for anyone who needs to find this. Saying that 11.9% of the players surveyed, over 3,300 of them were surveyed anonymously, and they were extorted and forced into fixing. It wasn't the gangs. It wasn't Dan Tan that was extorting them. It was their own club owners. They were saying, if you want to play for me, you're going to have to lose. You're going to have to lose. They weren't bringing in outside gangsters. Three, now we're getting on very thin ice. Now we're getting really controversial, okay? Everyone ready for this? Everyone kind of air it out? Soren, you're okay with me? All right, please don't beat me up, okay, man? You're good. I can just see you and Jesper just hammering me. The failure of an education campaign. Total failure. Shall I say that louder? I don't want to upset anyone in the room. In the years before the rest of these guys, the years before the unveiling of this system of business of corruption and match fixing in the lower leagues in Italy, Sport Radar, Transparency International had been going to Italy and they'd be running a course called Train the Trainers, an education against match fixing. Looked like they really had a good job there, didn't they? I mean, you're not just talking about the isolated players, you're talking about a system of business. So you've got club owners, you've got a new network, new people running the brokerage network, and you've got a failure of an established education campaign against match fixing. Right, the big news. FIFA arrests this year. Anyone read the FBI indictment, the 164-page indictment? It's actually really easy reading. I can read it. I've read it 5 or 6 times now. If I can do it, then everyone in this room can do it. It's almost a thriller. They're relying on the co-conspirators, 25 for them, but it's clear who they are in most cases, covert witnesses in front of a grand jury in the United States. They have bank details, they have account details. It's a very robust case. They still need their day in court, but it's very strong. It's strong enough for the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, to stand up in a televised press conference and talk about it. Almost everything that those guys in CONMEBOL and CONCACAF touched, they scammed. They scammed marketing rights, they scammed, according to the FBI. They scammed sponsorship, they scammed TV rights, they scammed ticketing, they scammed just about anything they could touch. So I took that 164-page document and I went through my sources and I asked them 2 questions. I said, how can anyone connected with their financial system in these organizations have any credibility? Because these guys weren't skimming off $10,000 from a $10 million contract. They were skimming off $6 million from a $10 million contract. Like, what accountant could possibly have missed that? But 2, I said, okay, if these guys scammed marketing, TV, sponsorship, blah, 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 what was their attitude on fixing? Because these are the guys whose photos are up on all the anti-match fixing campaigns in the CONCACAF and CONMEBOL region. Jeffrey Webb gave the keynote statement for sports integrity in Canada. I'm not making that up. Really, 4 weeks before he was arrested by the FBI, he was lecturing the Canadians on sports integrity. The estimates that I have among very senior people placed in the sports world, including the integrity people in these worlds, is that somewhere conservatively between 6 and 20 of the presidents of soccer federations internationally are helping the fixers. 6 to 20. That's not all 209 FIFA officials. That's not Sept Blatter. That's not Jerome Valky. That's not the guys in Switzerland. But those are the local 6 to 20 presidents of the national soccer federations. That is why, and I'm not trying to be unfair to Sport Radar and Transparency International, that is why those education campaigns are not working in most parts of the world against match fixing. And that's why they're running these desperate campaigns with Interpol to put the blame on players, because they don't want that known. 10 minutes. Less than that, actually. Jesper, please help me with this word, because I know you couldn't understand my Danish before. There is a key concept in Denmark called Janteloven. Jantelov. Thank you. I'm improving. Jantelov, as you know, Jesper, is the idea that who do you think you are? You're nothing special. Don't get above yourself, because we're just the same. And the corollary to Jantelov is that we're Danes, we're Scandinavians. That's very interesting for you, Declan Hill, to come to us and tell us all this stuff about the world. But we're Scandinavians. We're not going to fix. And Jack Anderson, Sweden-Denmark, it wasn't a fix. It was a derby match. That's what they're thinking. You may be from Belfast and I might be from Canada, but that's what they're thinking. They're thinking Jack was a good speech, but they didn't fix Sweden-Denmark. Am I right? Yeah, and don't mess with Jack, by the way, because he's a much tougher man than I am. That's good and it's bad. I can go back. I don't want to reuse the same PowerPoint, but you can see that this match-fixing tide is coming closer and closer to you. You can see that Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, Sweden, Norway, Finland, England, countries that are culturally and economically comparable to Denmark have had scandals. You guys have had isolated scandals of players who've been caught fixing and gambling against themselves. So the problem is there. The issue is there. I don't want to lose my credibility with you guys and say that Denmark is Italy, that Denmark is just like Turkey or Greece, that the club owners here is a business, a system of business and corruption. I don't want to say that. But I do want to say what Jack Anderson and Declan Hill know very well. We know it's in our DNA, this stuff, because our background are Irish. You know what you call somebody a murderer, raping, scandalous guy that does your stuff in Ireland? A Dane. In Gaelic language, Dane. Why? Because it's the Vikings. When Jack Anderson and Declan Hill's people were fighting against the Vikings, against your people, we didn't build our fortress after you came. We weren't like, oh, okay, I'll fight off Anders, but I'm going to make my castle now. We tried to make our castles before you guys came, before your ancestors pulled up on the beaches and started burning our monasteries. We needed to make our protection then. And that's what I'm urging you guys now to do. I'm urging you to build your fortresses because you can see this tide of corruption is coming closer to you. Stop match fixing. Hashtag stop match fixing. Is it a good campaign? Yes. Is it perfect? No, by no means. Is it a good, excellent first start to a campaign? Yes, it is. It's why I've flown in. It's why Jack Anderson has flown in. It's why Khalid Ali has flown in. It's why Unibet has put money into it. It's a good start. My task for any journalists here is to test it. Constantly test it. Don't be placid and complacent. They've set it up, then you go and test it. Phone up their hotline. See what they're doing. Go talk to an athlete and survey them. Say, what do you guys think of this? Have you actually, as a 16-year-old, tested it out? Have you done it? Have you worked on it? And keep working on this. I'm going to leave you with these words. Remember I started with Robert Kutashi, the Hungarian former sports journalist turned soccer coach turned anti-match-fixing crusader? He phoned a friend of mine who was a Hungarian journalist in that 20 minutes before he committed suicide. And these are his last recorded words. My life is over. All I've fought for has come to nothing. The club itself has been crushed under the dirt. The people whom I trusted have betrayed me. We were fighting against them with slingshots, and they had mortars. I leave you with his words. I leave you with his vision of a family man who trusted the fight against match-fixing. I beg you, do not have any Danish Robert Kutashis. Do not trust this system. Fight against match-fixing and take it seriously. Thank you. Tusind tak.